Alright. We don't even need to do any of the stream tagging or anything like that. I just need to go find the video. There it is.
Instantly switched his...
Yeah, last time I got 2 minutes in and I had to stop. So I just deleted that stream. We'll go again.
Jujutsu Kaisen has been in effect for over a year, with Chapter 223 being named the Inhuman Makio Shinjuku Showdown Part 1. And I'm going to shorten that to Shinjuku Showdown for my sanity. We've since gotten 40 consecutive chapters of fighting. These can be broken up in various ways. Most people...
He's got that, He's got that hammerhead forehead. Did they ever draw Gojo with this big of a forehead before? This is for fun, so I don't care about derailing the stream. Yeah, I forget that opening is useless on whatever this is. I use an alternate browser for when I stream. His forehead isn't even that big here. That's a really weird picture. They drew him so fucking weird when Yuta took over his body.
People considering the fights to be the following: Gojo versus Sukuna, Sukuna versus Kashimo, Hikari versus Urame, Taka...
F. I was hoping we would get some kind of fight, and we never did. It was literally entirely off screen until Urame dies.
Versus Kenjaku, and then the subsequent Sukuna raid, in which everyone just keeps jumping Sukuna one after the other, and sometimes all at once. For the sake of this video, I'll be sticking with the first 4 fights, then breaking up Sukuna raid into the following segments: Yuji and Higuruma, which will be chapters 244 to 248, Yuji and Yuta during chapters 249 to 251.
I think I was about done with this project by the time I got here. I should have added transitions to all of these, and I should have edited the panels to be taking up more of the screen. This is kind of awkward, the way that it's like bigger than the panel and centered. I probably should have like made it fit inside the panel and put it higher. I don't know.
Maki and Kusakabe from chapters 252 to 254, Geto's family in chapters 255 and 256, Yuji's awakening through chapters 257 to 259, and finally Yuji, Todo, and Yuta, the most recent chapters of 259 to 263.
The only thing I missed for like Sukuna raid would be like 264 and I think 260. I think it's 264 and 265. But it's basically just Hana jumps in and then Todo like eats a black flash and is out of the battle protecting her. I guess if anything, it's just one more chapter for the Todo portion, but it's not a big deal. In hindsight, I guess I would break down Yuta's section and Gojo's body as its own, and then the rest of it as basically the ending of it.
So let's go!
But obviously this video came out before for the ending.
The strongest sorcerer in history versus the strongest sorcerer of today. Gojo versus Sukuna is in a lot of respects not only the climax of the Cola games, but of all of Jujutsu Kaisen. As from the first few chapters in the first episode of the anime, Gojo utterly humiliated One Finger Sukuna. And shortly after, Yuji asked the now infamous, "Would you lose?" In hindsight, it's easy to see that he would lose this battle as the strongest versus the strongest, as he let everyone pat his back and accepted their help to fire a 200% hollow purple.
One of the comments was saying that it's not obvious Gojo would win, and that it's really back and forth, and I agree, it's written for the most part well to make it seem like it could go either way through the fight, but narratively, Gojo has to lose this fight. There's like not really another conclusion you can come to like reading the manga. Like the entire point of the story is that Gojo has to lose this battle. No offense, but if you can't pick up on that, you're probably not the best interpreter. I don't know how well this video holds up, but like, yeah, anyone who's on the side of like, nah, Gojo should have just cleaned up Sukuna, it's like, I get that from a power scaling perspective. There isn't a good way to ride around Infinity that's like compelling in universe. The way that it happened, I don't even know if it's all that compelling. But like, yeah, so annoying.
Shit, but did show he had on some level accepted he wasn't alone. Unlike Sukuna, who at this point seems to still...
Did I literally use the flower page? Yeah. No, I didn't.
Did show he had on some level accepted he wasn't alone. Unlike Sukuna, who at this point seems to still believe he's done everything on his own strength, Gojo boldly declared...
That was a point that I was trying to kind of push, and I think I even pushed it in a short about Sukuna, which I can pull up after this. But I thought that there would be sort of like a Naruto thing, where they would point out that Sukuna is like a hypocrite, because of the fact that he views himself on his own strength despite using other people. But the manga never really did that. It just kind of had him lose. It just kind of turned it into a black or white. He lost, so his philosophy is completely wrong. Which is, like, fair enough. I think that's because Gege just, like, gave up on the manga, like, at the end. I still don't think the ending is that bad for Jujutsu Kaisen, but I think the ending could have been a lot better if Gege didn't just give up. And, everyone tries to, like, kind of give Gege credit for, like, sticking it through. But, like... I don't know, man. Like, Absolute Batman is monthly. Chainsaw Man is monthly to, like, bi-weekly. Like, and he's working on Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, so he's still using the brand for his recognition. Maybe he should have taken breaks and put in more time on the ending.
Players that Sukuna is the challengers. He heals his arms and the showdown gets started. The warm-up was immaculate. Raw hands and choreography all for pretense, as we and they know it comes down to domain versus domain. But they simply love fighting, and with all the hatred they have for each other, they'd rather just get some steam off before things get real. Sukuna wins the first clash due to his style of domain countering conventional domains. Then Gojo pulls out new shadow style to get back to hands and destroys Malevolent Kitchen with red. Then in the second domain clash, which for comparison, a prodigy like Mahito can only use domain once a week.
You gotta love the shade thrown at Mahito.
Gojo instantly switched his conditions for defense against Kitchen, taking it back to hands again, until he realizes Sukuna switched the sure hit effect off to overpower Infinite Void, to which Gojo pulls out Falling Blossom emotion to counter it. Gojo pulls out his domain again, shrinking it to reinforce it even further thanks to his experience in Prison Realm, with them canceling out. Only for him to almost immediately go domain for domain again twice in a row, with Gojo ultimately landing Void on Sukuna, who shifts the burden of adaptation to Mega B, leaving them both too trained for expansion and bringing it to Gojo 1v2ing Sukuna and Maharaga. And damn, Gege really has gotten better for making JJK, because these chapters after the Domain War are, like, perfect. Gege must have Malevolent Kitchen the way he could.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
A lot of the JJK manga is, like, not that intelligible, but I do think this fight in particular is really good. This fight and then, like, Maki and Sukuna in particular, like, these two fights are, like, almost perfect in terms of how, like, readable the fights are.
After some peek, we end up with Sukuna using 10 Shadows Totality to form Agito, who turns this into a 3v1, with Gojo keeping up and landing a Black Flash, taking out Agito and giving him the opening to destroy Maharaga with Hollow Purple, leading everyone watching the battle and anyone reading at home to believe Gojo had this in the bag. At the start of chapter 236, we see Gojo...
I cracked myself up, man. Yeah, the second you read this and it cuts to this, you know Gojo's right. What song was I using here? Yeah, Planet Wisp fits this really well. Why did I use Sneaky Beat? Oh, I think that was for Takaba.
And Geto talking in an airport with all the characters relevant to Gojo who have died in the background, discussing Gojo's strength and relation to his loneliness. He says as much as people adored him, no one could ever understand him, with him saying he wanted on some level to reach Sukuna. But Nanami criticizes him for never really caring about saving people or upholding sorcery, only caring about his own kicks.
Okay, what did I put here? Some people consider this character assassination because of his relationship with Yuji Megama Yuta. There's points to and for this, but this line can coexist with him being a father figure. He's somewhat torn between being the strongest and being Gojo. Yeah. The fact that he wanted them to pat him on his back and he wanted to be with them was enough to show that he didn't really see himself as above them. And that it's more so like some weird ego issue he's got, which is why I don't really like Gojo. But I don't think it takes away from him being well written. I think what he does in the story works still.
Really caring about saving people or upholding sorcery, only caring about his own kicks. When it comes to Gojo's characterization, I think it's too big to get into everything in detail here, but as an oversimplification, I think Gojo lost because he wasn't alone and never really was. From Geto, Shoko, Yaga, Megami, Yuta, and Yuji, even Ijichi, Udahime, Haibara, and Nanami, he only ever viewed himself as isolated and so was contradictory, since he yearned for something he could have had. A contradiction Sukuna didn't have, as he wholeheartedly commits to and believes in the idea that he alone is the strongest. When we cut back to Gojo's corpse, we learn Sukuna used Maharaga as a blueprint for bypassing Limitless, proving his intelligence, as Gojo stated he could have won without Megami's techniques. He praises Gojo as Kashimo jumps into battle. This is such an incredible start to the final arc, which was recently confirmed by Gege himself. Even if the power scaling around Gojo versus Sukuna is a little questionable, which...
Yeah, I fucking, there's a guy called Lilo's, who I keep up with sometimes. Yeah, Lilo's Adventure. He is like the ultimate, like, Gojo is just a better fighter, a stronger fighter, better for cross-verse, better against everyone else in JJK. Because, like, the way Sukuna beat him is sort of, like, more hacksy than power-based. And, he's, like, one of the biggest people that argues that, like, Shinjuku Gojo can beat Heian-era Sukuna if he doesn't have Maharaga to, like, use the world-cutting slash and all that. The power scale of Gojo versus Sukuna is very, very questionable. Because Limitless is just such a hard ability to ride around. The way that they introduced it, at least, if they had made it, like, power-oriented instead of, like, hacks-oriented, then you could just have Sukuna just be physically stronger. But obviously that wouldn't be as interesting.
You know, there are plenty of videos on already. Thematically, Gojo,
Who was that?
questionable. Which, you know, there are plenty of videos on...
Yeah, Leela's, I literally put Leela's here. And then Ronin. Man, Avent used to do, power scaling. Oh, it's a Battle IQ video. I was like, Avent's like a Death Note guy.
On already. Thematically, Gojo losing is what should have happened. And with him and Geto's discussion in the airport, I think it was resolved beautifully.
Such a Gojo hater, I just
With
put
the
him,
expectation that
just put him
Gojo's
getting
tied
fucking
into
beat
the
up
end of
by
his
Toji
development,
here.
which was strongest versus the strongest. And the resolution being handled so well, it completely sends off Gojo as a character and leaves Sukuna weakened enough that everyone jumping him makes complete sense for power scaling. The action and writing are almost perfect. S tier. Picking up the chapter Gojo died, Kashimo instantly fights Sukuna. Sukuna retrieves Kamutoke before Kashimo asks Sukuna about his strength, implying his view of trying to understand those weaker than him as an inherent aspect of strength, which Sukuna calls him out for.
I love this, by the way. I hate that Gojo has Kamatake, or Sukuna. I don't like that he has Fuga and Kamatake. Because it literally just exists so that his fights with Jogo and Kashimo, he can scold them at their own thing. It's so lame.
The action is by no means bad, but definitely not at the level the raw hands were at in Gojo versus Sukuna. No means bad, but definitely...
This is my own theory, but I think Gege made this fight kind of lower intensity-wise so as not to risk outshining Gojo versus Sukuna, which is kind of valid and smart. I agree, Kobeni. Yeah, you can't have, like, Yuji's Awakening or, like, Yuta's Domain, like, immediately after Gojo dies. You can't have someone else just come in and actually just whoop the shit out of Sukuna, or else it makes Gojo look so bad. Someone was going to get the short end here. If he didn't use Kashimo, I think he could have done a Hikari. If you wanted to keep the same thing going, because everyone else has to shine at some point. And Hikari's the only one that you can justify making it out while getting his ass beat because of Jackpot RCT. But I think Kashimo works better. I get why Kashimo fans kind of don't like this fight, but I think it's good. I don't know.
Definitely not at the level the raw hands were at in Gojo versus Sukuna.
It's a much more valid criticism. All they kind of do is just kind of shoot shit at each other and then the waffle thing. It's such a poorly drawn fight, I'll say. This is one of those fights that when it gets animated, people won't have any issues with. Or at least not nearly as many.
We then get an explanation of his ability, which describes him as controlling and using electromagnetic waves. While this is a power scaling topic, it is a flaw in the writing that the speeds used are so vastly different from the Mach 1 and 3 statements made in reference to Shibuya and Culling Games characters. But seeing as how Maki already performed an outlier feat, which Gege calls out, it does present an inconsistent story, which is a
this fucking she was like about to dap me up. There's like no saving the scaling. In the manga at least, the scaling is relatively consistent until this, but like in the anime, this shit just happens.
The flaw of writing. Sukuna then uses Kamotake to incarnate himself, restoring his body like with the reverse curse technique. After flexing on Kashimo, Sukuna tells him he's just like Yorozu and Gojo, telling him he's preaching about what he doesn't know, saying he knows the answer but won't accept it, calling him strong before killing him with the world-cutting slash. In the afterlife, Kashimo remembers being told those who challenge the strongest seek recognition and validation, with Sukuna saying that lamenting the solitude this creates makes Kashimo greedy, before calling himself apart from Kashimo, Gojo, and Yorozu, the chapter ending with Yuji and Higuruma landing next to Sukuna. The power scaling is contradictory to itself, that being the story, and making it so Sukuna is healed undoes a lot of the hard lifting Gojo versus Sukuna did to make everyone else standing a chance make sense. Kind of a bad set of chapters, but thematically it picks up right where Gojo versus Sukuna ended, reinforcing that Gojo viewed his strength in the light he did because of his desire to be with those he saw as below him, which is why people like Kashimo and him can't measure up to Sukuna, who only calls those below him different flavors to devour. I'm not gonna lie, if I weren't a nerd-ass power scaler loser, this fight would be S tier for the character writing, but even at the basic choreography is kind of lacking too. Especially considering Kashimo is a brawler who can do whatever he wants with lightning, it's very underwhelming right after Gojo versus Sukuna. A tier.
Yeah.
So, like, this fight isn't concluded yet, and even from what we have, the only thing that realized ties back to Sukuna, so I'll be talking about it during a later part. Just going off what we know, this fight is mid, and we don't even know what's happening in terms of the fight, only that Urame spent his screen time glazing Sukuna. C tier. Now, chat, give me a chance. This fight is a perfect send-off to Genjaku as a player in the story. While this is widely...
I remember people at the time hated this, and as the story went on, they just kind of forgot he existed. And ever since JJK has ended, I don't think people really talked him up all that much. I think people were just mad he went out because it was like a gag fight.
Hated by the greater fan base. I actually think Sukuna versus Kashimo is the reason people hate this fight. Because, like, okay, imagine reading the peak that is Gojo versus Sukuna, and
reused animation. I think I literally copy pasted the two slides from earlier in the video.
And then immediately Kashimo, this like hyped up bronze medal of the verse, jumps in, gets bodied, Sukuna heals the damage Gojo did, and then it cuts to a comedic fight between Takaba and Kenjaku.
Okay. I was going to say that and I forgot to because I wanted to let the video go. This is not as big of a deal as I thought it was or as fans did. So Sukuna's body physically healing from the damage Gojo did to it is like kind of whatever. Because he's like cursed technique, cursed energy, and domain are still on cooldown. Which, when you're dealing with someone this strong, that is like a significant boost to your opponent.
Heals the damage Gojo did, and then it cuts to a comedic fight between Takaba and Kenjaku. I would have been pissed week to week too, but I was able to read this fight all at once with hindsight when I went through it the first time.
Dude, I'm reading up on Chainsaw Man right now, or I caught up to it. I cannot stand Chainsaw Man because it's ongoing. Like the current Chainsaw Man, like right now we're in the War Devil arc, like chapter 220-ish. That shit is fucking ass week to week. I kind of understand why some people, why people keeping up with this as it was going on were like angry. If it took a full month to get through this, I might drop it.
Which made me like it a lot more. Kenjaku starts the chapter by beating up some randoms, then Takaba appears. In a typical villain fashion, Kenjaku tries spouting that, "I'm really not interested in you anymore," evil-ass monologue, and Takaba digs himself out of the dirt, leaving Kenjaku stunned, ultimately acknowledging Takaba as an opponent. Then the next chapter starts with flashbacks, so we have to discuss this now. The entire pace of Shinjuku Showdown is built around a specific formula. A character enters a fight, they do something unexpected, there's a flashback that explains how it makes sense, They get hyped up, then they lose or deal a slight amount of damage to Sukuna. This is known as the Sukuna cycle, and as a hot take, I think it's fine for this cycle to exist, but I do have a problem with the backstory element. This is done entirely to give Gege the freedom chapter to chapter to make up the story as it goes on, which is fine, plenty of brilliant manga could do this, but it's extremely hit or miss when it happens. In this fight, it just explains why Takaba got chosen to fight Kenjaku, which isn't really necessary when Kenjaku immediately figures out how his powers work, and if anything, the flashback hurts the flow of the story, since it cuts off right when Kenjaku starts explaining it. In this case, it would be fine to cut out the flashback and the story wouldn't change. It's worthless. This is case by case, but in general, it feels more like a crutch Gege has given himself so he can retroactively make characters training in the 1 month time skip have all the payoff with no build up. It usually feels like the author going, oh no, this thing that had no build up is like totally fine to be cool, here's why. Whereas all these flashbacks condensed into a training arc could have built everything up naturally, with all the payoffs feeling more natural. An example being...
In general, this like works when you're reading it the first time. Because it's like, ooh, this is shocking. But if you try to reread this shit, it feels like ass because of this. It's just kind of like that style where it's like trying to make it to where there's a surprise every week. But it just doesn't really work. I saw a video where someone was talking about how, like, war arcs tend to fail because of this. And they do the exact same thing. They just have, like, any other character can just randomly come in from any other fight at any point in time. And, like, in My Hero's final war arc, that kind of thing happens where, like, random combatants are joining up at random moments and, like, characters get power-ups for no reason and all that. And then it just cut to flashbacks at random. And it destroys the pacing in a way to where it makes it hard for you to, like, stay invested. Because, like, oh, if I get invested in the fight, someone else can just show up or someone can pull something out. And I think in general, that style is kind of what cripples this final arc a little bit. I think that, and I might say this in the video, I'm not sure, but I think if he would have just gone through the training but then just had everyone break their limits in the fight anyways, like a Dragon Ball thing, I think it would have ended up fine. I don't think he needed to do the flashback style.
Yuji's convergence. If we had seen that Yuji could do steps 2 and 3 in the training arc but failed to master it in time, then mid-battle Chozo gives Yuji step 1. It would have had the same impact as it does now, but it wouldn't need a weird little paragraph or text in the middle of the action to explain why Yuji can only do steps 2 and 3. So it would flow better, with the same impact, and feel more satisfying since we didn't need to expect Yuji to use convergence after failing to learn it. Next chapter opens up with another flashback, showing Takaba's backstory. As a lonely kid who wanted to make friends, he tried too hard to overcompensate and ended up being laughed at instead of making friends. With his lack of coworkers and audience feeding into his lonely life and warping the way he looks at comedy, him admitting he didn't confront comedy the right way to avoid being hurt. He says that even if 99 people laugh, he'd be unsatisfied it wasn't 100, notably forcing Kenjaku's internal monologue to shift to make the chapter funnier, which I did find hilarious. The next chapter starts with an overly edgy special grade curse getting summoned by Kenjaku just to get hit by a bus, which leads to Kenjaku playing along with comedian, running through goofy skits with Takaba all chapter.
I'm just saying, man, I think Kenjaku wanted those back shots. Look at this. Look at how bad he is. And he's in Ghetto's body, too. He's not even in a woman's body right now. He's literally in Ghetto's body.
Until he eternally monologues that he's slowly losing the battle since the damage he's taking is real, meaning he needs to defeat him with something other than violence. The two take the stage and deliver a back-and-forth stand-up comedy set.
This panel goes so fucking hard. I love that out of context. This looks like they're about to do the wildest shit imaginable.
Until it's curtains, where Yuta catches Kenjaku off guard with Todo's help and decapitates him. Kenjaku states his will be passed on, then changes the rules of the Cooling Games and makes Sukuna capable of continuing the merger. I personally relate to Takaba very heavily, being a loser who finds themselves funny, trying to make it in the world, which might be influencing this, but I enjoyed the character writing heavily, and thematically it's entirely isolated to these two's fight. So that's all there is to say for this. I will add that I find it...
I think that's another reason this fight didn't really perform well, despite it actually being one of the best written parts of the final arc, is because it's incredibly self-contained. This does not really translate to anything else that goes on. Which, like, plenty of the Sukuna raid is done like this, where it's just someone's character clashing against Sukuna, and it doesn't really relate to the other people around them, but it's different because their physical impact on the story is affecting Sukuna, so it's more understandable. But here, it's literally just two people, like, I'm like a few miles away, just doing their own thing.
Very fitting that Kajaku, someone who began the merger purely out of curiosity, was defeated by someone with a power he'd never seen before. Something completely out of left field. For me, the humor works, the power scale is fine since Taka was a borderline gag character, and the character writing is perfect. I would put this in A tier, this being the gatekeeper from anything that isn't quite peak. After the chapters dedicated to Kenchaku, we cut to, you guessed it, a flashback explaining how Judge Man's lawyer powers work. And they do a lot of yapping to basically say Sukuna can't be charged for his crimes because he committed a lot of crimes that aren't punishable by death.
Literally what
make
you
his
fucking
domain
sound
a
like.
place. Then Higuruma and Yuji force Sukuna into a retrial, and Sukuna confesses to speed up the process, but unfortunately Sukuna outplanned them, and Judge Man confiscated Kamutake. Chozo, Ino, and Kusakabe all get bodied with Sukuna cornering Higuruma.
Poor Chozo, man. He got his ass beat in every panel he's in this arc. Chozo never gets a dub, does he? He kills Yuji, which is like kind of an L for him long term. And then he gets his ass beat by Kenjaku. He kind of beats Naoya, and then he gets his ass beat by Yuta. And then he gets his ass beat by Kenjaku again. And then he gets his ass beat by Sukuna like 4 times.
Back to his conversation about being unable to look Yuji in the eyes anymore, strengthening that he's not afraid to die in this battle if it earns him atonement, in his eyes at least. Sukuna then hypes Higuruma as someone at his level of genius, then throws shade at Yuji and tears Higuruma apart to force him to learn the SCT. Before Higuruma looks Yuji in the eyes and entrusts the executioner's sword to him before dying. Sukuna then monologues to himself about being disappointed Higuruma didn't do more, giving us the speech about only using other people for entertainment, and admits something inside him has changed because of Yuji's indomitable ideals. He vows to crush them before Kenjaku's rule takes effect and Yuta arrives. With the heavier work done to build up Higuruma in his Culling Games battle, this fight completes his journey excellently, showing Higuruma's willingness to defend others doesn't waver even once his own life gets put on the line, having been given the resolve to fight because of Yuji reminding him why he started. Even though he died, he passes on his executioner's sword to Yuji, the most blatant case of putting the fight in his hands.
Except he's not dead now. This is one of those things I think the final arc ruined, is that Higuruma 100% should have died here. This is not like Naruto, where like Choji and Neji like needed to live because there was like an entire other portion of the story. Like, this is the end. And JJK kills people when their stories are done. There's no reason Higuruma needed to survive. You can make the case that it's better for him to live because in the epilogue he's being... Like, Higuruma in the epilogue is like being put on trial for the people he killed. Because he did kill innocent people in the Culling Games. So I think there's like... You could make the case that Higuruma being alive at the end is more fitting so he can go to prison and atone. But I don't know. I think it works better if he dies here. It feels weird to know Higuruma survives this. Hi. I think I have one for that. Oh no, I lost my place. I gotta find it. Oh wait, there.
Showing Higuruma's willingness to defend others doesn't waver even once his own life gets put on the line, having been given the resolve to fight because of Yuji reminding him why he started. Even though he died, he passes on his executioner's sword to Yuji, the most blatant case of putting the fight in his hands. And Sukuna admitting something has changed about him because of Yuji is tied back into the loneliness of strength theme, with Yuji being someone weak who stayed true to his ideals while Sukuna is someone strong who finds himself contradicting those ideals he stayed in. All in all, dope-ass fight, clean action, good character writing, and building on the pre-established themes of the arc. This is a certified S-tier fight, even higher than Gojo vs. Sukuna, at least for me because of Higuruma's redemption. Now, whether or not we chain this to the previous part is subjective, but it wouldn't change what I would say about it, which is why I decided to make it its own section. The fight starts with Yuta admitting going after Kenjaku was selfishness caused by not wanting Gojo to have to kill Geto's body again, and confirming that Sukuna is still nerfed from Gojo as his RCT is only now recovering.
Yeah. So it's not like him healing with Kamotake when he goes to fight Kashimo is like as much of an undoing of Gojo versus Sukuna as I made it out to be. As is the case where I didn't really understand what was going on very well. Yeah, I'll put a Sukuna's reverse curse technique starting to return. It might only be a matter of time before he uses his domain again. Yeah, they literally measure it out in the steps that he gets his abilities back. Like, he could use his technique first, and then RCT, and then domain.
He activates his domain, Senbon Sakura Kageyoshi, and Yuji starts nerfing Sukuna by aiming for the soul to weaken his hold on Megumi. There's an extremely tight exchange of blows in the infamous We Cheated panel, which leads to the pressure keeping up until Yuta lands Jacob's Ladder, and this is where my entire respect of an entire character was lost. Megumi on his hands and knees after everyone fought so hard to give him the chance to fight, and his bitch ass is trying to summon Maharaga again and saying he's had enough. I've had enough, Megumi. This fight ends with Maki backstabbing Sukuna, which is tough as hell.
I love that vocally I can pick up on the fact that I was watching Noah's when I made this. That's like an emulation of his voice. I do that when I watch people a lot. I've come around to the fact that Megumi... Look, this makes sense for who Megumi is and Megumi's character, and this is actually not bad writing. It's just unlikable. But, like, when you don't like Mahito, that's an example of good writing, right? So I don't actually think this is bad writing. I just think Megumi is kind of supposed to be unlikable. And I think this does tie in nicely to the monologue that Yuji has about how when people are put in tough situations, it requires a level of empathy to understand that they might want to give up. And it's more about the fact that like he has to respect that decision, even if he would prefer Megumi to keep on living. Which I actually do like the writing of that. That's one of my favorite moments in the series, if not my favorite moment. But yeah, I just don't think it's poorly written. I think it's written very well. I just think that it makes Megumi incredibly unlikable.
Unlike Megumi. The reason this is its own fight is because Yuji's true narrative moment against Sukuna is later, and Yuta's most defining moment is also much later, which I'm sure you already know what that is. I'm also just going to keep it real. I didn't want Megumi to drag down Higuruma, so yeah. In reality, we just get some clean fighting and Megumi being a little piss brat. Not much to chew into, but it's easy on the eyes. B tier. Maki's fight against Sukuna is an interesting one. Since so many people look down on Maki for her abilities, it's a pleasant surprise to me that he recognized her as a real threat and philosophical enemy. It starts with her waiting for Yuta to be defeated to land.
This is my favorite edit of the video. I love that meme so much. The robber that was stretching. This shit makes me giggle.
Surprise attack on Sukuna. One that keeps him hurt due to her having the soul split katana. With Yuji down to heal, Maki takes on Sukuna in some raw clashes for a chapter straight, with Ino distracting Sukuna long enough for Kusakabe to sneak up.
That attack that killed Yuta, she just kind of hopped over, by the way.
With Nanami's curse tool. This chapter started with everyone hyping up Kusakabe as the strongest grade 1, and then once he does, Maki takes back over, with the narrator stating she was the entree to the appetizers of Kashimo, Higuruma, and Yuta had prepared him for. Which, like, damn, that's some cold-ass writing. Sukuna then goes on to say that Maki denies the very reason of sorcery, and that she was the first to place a roll upon him, with him unleashing a black flash on her and leaving Kusakabe alone to face Sukuna while everyone is down. Sukuna toys with him before his flashback, where everyone calls him a good guy. Back to the fight, Kusakabe unleashes his ultimate, which Sukuna kinda just chats through. He tells himself that he has to try because Yaga died, and his students would die, pushing through for all their sake. Fortunately, Miguel shows up to save the day. Toshi Fushiguro has been a pivotal figure in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, being stated by having his heavenly pact that he has broken free of fate and irreparably altered the course of the Jujutsu world.
Now, if I was a real good editor and I wasn't a fraud, I would have put Toji bursting through the domain right here. like through Megumi's ink thing into Dagon's domain. That is literally like that's. I'm pretty sure in the part they talk about him being someone who broke free of Jujutsu in that moment. In that picture of him just like reaching through with like the clouds behind him, it's so much better for this than this part.
In a lot of ways, Maki is incarnation of Toji, and so Sukuna acknowledging this type of fighter as not only one of the strongest, but someone who forced a roll upon him, shows Sukuna.
Although I think the reason I use the scene is because of the fact that he admits that if he was doing this for the money, he would have run away right here. The only reason he fought was for his own pride, because he takes pride in the fact that he, I don't know what the word is, but basically the being free of Jujutsu thing.
In whatever way that may be, is trying to truly crush her without looking down on her just for existing, but as a threat. Seeing as how Maki and Toji's goals were to prove themselves that they were as strong as they had wanted to be, this is the
Yeah, because Toji acts like a bum. He acts like a homeless gambler and all that, but like deep down he did genuinely hate and resent the system of Jujutsu. That's why he fights Gojo here, and then that's Maki's like stated goal. So
culmination of Maki's awakening and my sacrifice. That more than just getting revenge against the Zenin, she's now one of the strongest. Kusakabe is more directly spelled out in the manga, but that doesn't make his selflessness any less touching. The execution is incredible, and that's what matters. These few chapters are goated. I'd consider Toji and Maki's culmination.
Absolute Batman build. Absolute Batman is so fucking crazy.
Kusakabe standing up on an Amp Sukuna S tier, honestly. Below Gojo versus Sukuna, but still great. Miguel shows up and saves Ui Ui, posing on this wall like he's Batman or something, with the narrator saying he's the one who went toe-to-toe with Satoru Gojo. After that, there's, you guessed it, a flashback explaining why he's here. Yuta tries to convince him and fails, but LaRue talks about going in order to send off Geto properly. Since everyone else tried their ways and failed. Back to the fight, Miguel and LaRue monologue about
and failed, and it just cuts to Meteor. Yeah, those two are dead. We never hear about them again.
How all the damage everyone is laying on Sukuna has left him weakened, and then they get straight to jumping, with Miguel hitting the 1, 2, 3 weave combo before literally emoting on Sukuna. And while I don't want to dwell on this, the is Gojo racist flashback, which he's not, the line "I'm special because I'm me" is literally perfect. Yuji, Chozo, and Maki all try to help, but can't keep Sukuna.
I don't like this video. I do. That's what matters.
From landing a black flash again, which makes Miguel start going, we need to get out of here, with Yuji and everyone else losing to Sukuna now. LaRue really hit him with that "I got one more in me" and showed his ability.
See, that's why Chozo's the GOAT. Miguel got his ass beat one time and he was scared to go, he was scared to go fight Sukuna. He was scared to jump Sukuna while he was down on like 10 HP. Chozo got his ass beat by like everyone in the series and he still squared up. No questions. It's called having that dog in you.
Ability to grab someone's attention, allowing Yuji to land a devious black flash and awaken.
Did I use the Taco Bell sound effect every time? I did some gimmick whenever he landed all his black flashes. I can't remember what I did. This fucking picture.
Wrong. I still do like his dynamic with his family, and I think this is a perfect last way for Geto's will to still be influencing things and somewhat help save the world. Since at the core of it all, Geto did want a world where the people he loved could be happy. With all the themes tied to Geto's characterization, which I've already discussed in my video on assimilation, it's just a nice little cherry on top of the work that the series had already done. Combined with some good action and the meme factor I experienced with everyone making fun of Miguel during it, I think this is a...
That was peak Lobotomy Kaisen. I think it's slightly less good than like Yuta coming back in Gojo's body, but that was pretty good. Everyone making fun of Miguel was so damn funny. He deserved it so much. And the fact that he immediately bails when things start looking bad too. It's so funny. Is this JJK? It's my like breakdown of Shinjuku up to chapter 263, I think.
A solid A tier fight.
I finished it, so I want to see what my
With
thoughts were
Gojo's
then.
awakening being one of the most highly regarded moments in all of animated Jujutsu Kaisen, and Maki's awakening having caught the internet on fire.
I'm gonna be a hater real quick. I fucking hate this thumbnail I saw. I fucking hate this thumbnail. This has like Been Drowned vibes. How many videos are there like this? Oh, it's just the two. But I hate the fucking edgy black background and black eyes. That guy's not a bad video maker though. I just hate that thumbnail.
4.
Oh, sorry.
Naturally, everyone wanted to see what Yuji Itadori's awakening would look like, and Gege did not fumble. We cut to Arame asking why Yuji is so strong, and
Sukuna slammed Gojo, by the way, even if it wasn't a 3v1. Yeah, I mean, it just depends. For some reason, he didn't come to the conclusion to use his world-cutting slash the way he did until he saw Maharaga do it. But I have the faith that if Sukuna was in his reincarnated Heian era form, and he had the, like, stamina to go for longer, that he probably would have just figured it out himself. But it's, like, low-key impossible to say he could. I just think he could. It's not the craziest thing to think of.
implies they should have equal potential as sorcerers. Back to the fight, they're staring each other down, and Yuji proves those extra hands don't mean shit, landing 2 consecutive black flashes on Sukuna, which leads to Sukuna trying to make the fight midair, which Yuji uses to his advantage, showing us he learns cleave and cuts apart a pillar to throw as a distraction, landing the 4th black flash midair. Then we get the backstory on Ino turning Nanami's technique into a cursed tool, with him remembering Nanami trusted him the most. He unleashes Ryu, which gets negged by Sukuna, but does remembering Nanami. Then we get the back.
Does he... Oh, he lost an eye because of Toji, right? That's why he's doing the Uncle Ruckus.
Most. He turning Nanami.
He's better looking than I remember. Maguna is stronger than Heian era because of the Tens. No, I just mean Heian... Well, actually, no. I guess Heian era is stronger. Because Arame says so, right? The incantation advantage and forearms. So he's good against domains. It's hard to say. Current era Sukuna has stuff that Heian era Sukuna didn't. I think the Heian era Sukuna, like, because he incarnates when he fights Kashimo. If he just did that against Gojo, I still think he could pull off the world-cutting slash without Maharaga. I don't think it's impossible, but it's difficult to prove he would be able to do it, like, without Maharaga, as an example.
His technique into a cursed tool, with him remembering Nanami trusted him the most. He unleashes Ryu, which gets negged by Sukuna, but does let Yuji get the 5-piece combo, another black flash, which even Sukuna hyping it up, saying he's chaining black flashes.
The brat! He's been chaining black flashes like it's nothing. He's so angry.
Like it's nothing. Back to a one-on-one, Sukuna shreds up Yuji with slashes, and Yuji eats those, closing in for number 6. Yuji dodges a stray and gets off number 7. Sukuna loses his temper and starts screaming at Yuji, calling him a brat, before Ina throws Nanami's to his neck, opening him up for number 8, with the narrator saying, "Don't just rival the king, surpass him."
Good voice crack.
There's a rumor Gege hates Yuji, but no author that hates their main character could make him this raw.
This was a misconception, by the way. He stated that he doesn't like trying to write for Yuji. He finds him difficult to write, which I don't blame. He's a very generic main character. So he's good against domains. It'd be too broken though. Like if Sukuna didn't do world cutting slash, he would reincarnate as really just either or. Well, I mean, he can do the world cutting slash in his hand form. Like he does it again after Gojo. I think he does it against Yuji, not Yuji, Yuta, Maki, Kashimo, and he does it against someone else, but I can't remember who. But he does it in his hand form. I just mean, like, I just don't know if logistically he would be able to think of the way to use it. he clearly has the ability to use World Cutting Slash in his hand form. It's just that he didn't know what to do until he saw Maharaga do it. So you would have to make the argument that he would like logistically come to that conclusion without Maharaga, which is like kind of impossible. But I believe in him. I would take he and Sukuna beating Gojo. I actually think he's stronger because like they're both stronger than Maharaga. The Ten Shadows is more useful like for if you're doing like a stats equal battle. I think like Maguna is better for like stats equal discussions because of Maharaga and Agito and like Rabbit Escape and all that stuff.
It's simply impossible. Gege has said his writing process is very spur of the moment consistently, and it feels like he just gets on the ball sometimes, like he landed Black Flash inking those pages. Yuji forced Sukuna to open up Malevolent Kitchen again, and shows he finally got a domain answer, having learned new shadow style from Kusakabe.
That was my goat right there, although he sucks ass at it.
He slows down the slashes and heals the ones that do land with RCT, forcing Sukuna to pull out his maximum technique, Fuga. Chozo steps in and uses his blood to protect Yuji, with a send-off talking about how he felt he failed Yuji.
Urame also makes the statement that Sukuna had been holding back, despite the fact that he had been trying at multiple points in the fight when he uses Furnace. Which implies that a domain plus Fuga is stronger than the World Cutting Slash for most characters. It's just that he couldn't ever attain those circumstances in his fight with Gojo, which is why he needed World Cutting Slash. Because Gojo's actually on his level, so they can just keep domain clashing, because they can both use RCT to use multiple domain expansions and all that.
With Yuji telling him he did what he could and that it was plenty, we get Chozo's death, which shakes Yuji's resolve when it's time to fight Sukuna again.
That's why the power scaling in Gojo versus Sukuna is so iffy. Like if Gojo and Sukuna fight like Naruto, right? Fuga in his domain is stronger against Naruto than the World Cutting Slash. Like for Sukuna, right? But against Gojo, the World Cutting Slash is more valuable. If that makes sense. Infinity is like annoying to ride around. That's why people weren't satisfied, because it's difficult to ride a satisfying way around Infinity. It's actually why I think Domain plus Fuga would have been better, because we already have it established that Gojo's Limitless doesn't negate Domain abilities. He says that even Jogo's sure hit would hit him. It just wouldn't do anything because he's stronger.
With Todo showing up to help, he reminds Yuji that everyone is likely okay, and the chapter ends primed for a Todo and Yuji jumping. With Chozo's responsibilities as a brother already set up in Shibuya and strengthened during Yuki vs. Kijaku, his death is more of a touching moment meant to test Yuji, and unlike in Shibuya where Yuji was fully ready to give up after Nobara, this time he was still standing. And while this is just a prediction, I think there will be a third moment where Yuji has to believe things will be okay on his own, surviving until someone else shows up, which I think would complete Yuji's journey nicely. Yuji's awakening is something that contrasts Gojo's awakening perfectly.
In a way we got this. He was the last person standing ready to fight Sukuna. And he literally saw Todo get like, yoinked out of there with a Black Flash, and Yuta like fell on his face, and instead of being worried and all that, he was like locked in. It's not really the same though. Like it's not like someone just like explicitly he thought died and he was ready to give up or anything like that. I mean, it sort of is. He has that like monologue with Megami where he's like, if you decide that you're gonna give up and die here, it'll be lonely without you. So it's kind of like that moment when Nobara shows up. Like Yuji wasn't sitting there like panicking. I mean, he wasn't sitting there like about to give up like this against Sukuna at the very end when Nobara showed up. So I guess we kind of got this.
To me. Whereas Gojo literally says he isn't even angry over Riko in that battle, here Yuji never has some self-absorbed inner monologue. He just continues to lock in and get to work. I also think Ino assisting in the middle of his awakening works well, since Gojo's awakening further split him from Geto and reinforced his weird elitist isolation mindset of strength. Yuji never tells Ino to stop or laments needing help, he just continues giving it his all and fights Sukuna. Thematically, Yuji's awakening at this point in the game is literally a culmination of the story. Gojo's desire to connect with those he saw as below him weakened Sukuna to the point everyone could jump him. Geto's will to change the world in LaRue distracted Sukuna long enough for Yuji to land Black.
Notice that I said LaRue, not Miguel.
Flash and Awaken. Ino assisting in the Black Flash combo literally carries Nanami curse technique and his curse tool. Higuruma passed on his resolve to protect people again thanks to Yuji and sealed Kamutake. Hikari helped by stalling Arame so he couldn't intervene, and
What is his pose he's hitting? What is he doing? So that's a funny looking domain. Also, why does Arame have like yaoi hands? I think he's in a girl's body at this point. Dude, I am the only one watching you all the best, bro, on this platform. Thanks, I think.
and Yuji cooked. While some Chozo fans are sad he never got a hype moment, I think it's because Yuki versus Kenjaku is good enough for Chozo, and giving him a moment
Dude, when he stands back up and he's all bloody, and he fucking, I think he decks Kenjaku, it's peak.
where he and Yuji say goodbye as brothers is good enough for me. I'm a Chozo fan, by the way, and I think this works. Overall, this is the height of this arc for me. Top of the list.
I reused that clip from earlier in the video.
With the story hyping another Jujutsu Kaisen between brothers, 260 heavily disappointed when I read it for the first time week to week. As Toto's reintroduction to the story is handled in flashbacks and interrupted by Gojo hype. Toto fainting Sukuna with Mace Crow so Yuji could land Black Flash number 9 was cool, but overall it felt really lame to explain away Toto getting Boogie Woogie back with a Viper Slap. Especially since it actually ended up amping him, which retroactively makes the Mahito fight less meaningful. And then we have Yuta and Gojo's body. This tore apart the internet when it dropped, and I still dislike it so much, but it does make sense. This is also one of the only points in the story where I think the concept being shown in flashbacks enhances the story, since this is supposed to be like a what the hell is wrong with Yuta moment. Everyone tells Yuta him risking his life by
Salmon. Yeah, this is where the art really started to like suffer. I'm pretty sure Gege was having like a legitimate medical issue at the time during this portion of the story, because this is why he went on break, where he was on break when I ended this, where I ended the chapters on this video. I'm pretty sure that's why I made it when I did, because I knew he was going to be on break.
Inhabiting Gojo's body is wrong, and that they care too much about him for it, which makes Yuta snap and ask if Gojo wasn't important, and that he's done pushing the burden of being a monster onto Gojo alone. The flashback then hypes up Yuta's potential as more than Gojo's, and ends with Gojo murdering the higher-ups of Jujutsu Society, saying he'll catch up to Geto. After clashing domains with Sukuna, Yuta gets pieced up by Sukuna inside the clash, and in the next chapter gets cooked by Sukuna until Inumaki bails him out so he can fire Purple. Then Yuji, Toto, and Yuta jump out of the smoke to get Sukuna, but Yuta falls face first into the dirt. Yuji...
Oh. I love it, Jujutsu Kaisen so much. I hate Yuta. Yuta's fine. I like Yuta. But I hate Yuta fans so much. I love the anti-Yuta propaganda.
And Toto then immediately pick up Yuta's slack and start firing Yuji's dismantles at the barrier between Megami and Sukuna's souls, using Sukuna's expectations of Boogie Woogie to leave him open for Hana's Jacob ladder, which many are hoping to end the Sukuna cycle. To dig into...
It kinda did. The funniest thing is that the entire time that we were on break waiting for that to happen, everyone was joking that Sukuna was so OP he was going to climb Jacob's ladder, and he did. That's something you just can't make up. It was so wild.
What this fight meant, it represents even more strongly the ultimate failure of Satoru Gojo as the strongest. Gojo, in his way of viewing himself as the strongest, created the gap between him and his friends, becoming monster-like. Yuta recognizes this, but ultimately fails to see why Gojo failed, as instead of choosing not to become a monster, he views it as a responsibility one must take on. Gojo could never defeat Sukuna because he was conflicted. As I highlighted earlier, he really wanted to be with those people he viewed as below him. Yuta similarly cares even more for Gojo than he did for Yuta, stating his fight with Kenjaku was born out of a selfish desire to prevent Gojo from feeling that pain of killing his best friend a second time. As oversimplified as it sounds, Yuta was never going to win against Sukuna going into the fight as a monster, because there is no greater monster than Sukuna, which is why Yuji and Toto are still fighting, because Yuji never became a monster in his pursuit to help and save people. His humanity is what made Nanami trust him in his final moments. His humanity is what made Nobara able to smile when she died. His humanity made Chozo pass on not as a curse, but as a brother. His humanity made Higuruma remember where he came from, to die looking Yuji in the eye as another human once again, redeeming him from the murderer he had become. With Jacob's ladder weakening the connection for Yuji to reach Megami again, I believe his humanity will help spur on Megami. And I think a Naruto and Obito style punch in the face telling him to fight could end the Sukuna style amazingly. Well,
this is what I thought was gonna happen. I actually like what happened with Megami better than this. The part where he gives Megami the talk about how, like, he can't really blame him for his situation, and about how he's able to empathize with him. That's like one of the best parts of the entire manga. That might be my favorite moment, is the conversation he has with Sukuna and Megami.
Yuta being a fraud does kind of suck. I think there is some good hand-to-hand, and the background of everyone in the story continuing to misunderstand Gojo is solid writing. The only issue for me being the power scaling and week-to-week experience, which drags us down to A tier for me. In the future, maybe with full hindsight, this fight could be goated, but more than others, we have to know what happens next to know if it was meaningless or not. That was a lot. So here's the full ranking. Hikari vs. Urame is the worst fight in C tier. Yuji and Yuta a tier above that, with Sukuna and Kashimo a tier above those. Then Geto's family, Yuji, Todo, and Yuta, and Takaba vs. Kenjaku all in A tier. Ending with Maki and Kusakabe, Gojo vs. Sukuna, Yuji and Higurumi, then Yuji's Awakening in S tier.
Higurumi.
If you think I got anything wrong about the narrative of Jujutsu Kaisen, tell me so I can learn. If you would change the ranking, even if you don't disagree with me, tell me why. If you have your own video on the topic, tell me so I can react to it on stream. Bye-bye.
Go back like to the very end.
With me, tell me.
Because I'm going to watch this one next. What do the comments say? I got a few comments on this, right? 10? Yeah, sorted by newest. Gojo never destroyed Sukuna's domain. Okay, I'm just going to like this. I might have gotten it wrong. Do you think the volume of deaths in JJK is running the story? Not really. The characters who have died in the current arc have already been established and such. Shibuya is a bit more acid than so early. Yeah, I should disagree. Like, I think Nanomi's death is better handled than most of the deaths in this arc. Especially since, like, Higuruma, the most impactful one, is like a fake-out death. Yuta and Rika. I don't get why people distinguish Rika. She's like a part of Yuta. She doesn't, like, do stuff on her own. Yuji and Todo versus Sukuna. Yuji and Higuruma, and then Takaba versus Kenjaku. Kashima and Kenjaku deserve better. Yeah, I didn't really consider Yuta like his own fight with Kenjaku. It's like one panel. It's wrong to say. This is the comment I remember. I do agree Gojo losing was best thematically. Yeah. That's why I don't argue with him. More views, WVid. 250. Why is it not viral? Need to check out the series. Yeah, this guy makes good music, by the way. I don't play it anymore because I don't think he likes people to use his music in a lot of stuff as much anymore. Oh, not that. Go to his channel. But check out Big Sexy. He makes good stuff. Although he unlisted a lot of the videos I like to use, which is a shame. But I'm sure a lot of this is pretty good. I haven't listened to it in forever. I think it's because I used his music at one point, right? Oh, I didn't even use his in this video. That's crazy.
It's said in Jujutsu Kaisen that curses are created when cursed energy leaks from humans as a result of their harboring of negative emotions. So it's the job for those who can see and fight them to exercise them. Jujutsu Kaisen has a few central themes, but the one I found myself the most personally invested in was assimilation. Assimilation is strictly defined as the absorption and integration of people, ideas, or culture into a wider society or culture. And when I watched JJK, the character who seemed to most strongly embody this idea was naturally Suguru Geto. But I think before we discuss him, there are two other notable cases I feel would help set the stage. Yuji, despite being a well-meaning, kind-hearted, and idealistic youth, was completely shattered by traumatic and life-threatening situations one after another, and consistently found himself making promises other people would make him break.
めるよ真人。俺はお前だ。俺はお前を否定したかった。きっと俺は大きな何かの歯車の一つに過ぎないんだろうな。
The teeth chattering.
However, I completely disagree with Yuji, and I think Gege does too. There are 3 instances that make me doubt this, but since the manga is ongoing, I think it's worth saying I could be proven wrong when the story ends. The first instance is Hikari, the suspended third-year student who finds himself fighting Yuji after Yuji attempts to trick him into a meeting to ask for help in the Cult Games. Hikari explains that the reason he's running a gambling ring is because idiots get fooled because of their own passion. Passion like, I'm going to change my life, and because of this, people make rash decisions, but also that without passion, people can't even fall in love. He goes on to say that a more direct exchange of passion is gambling, that life is a gamble, gambling is passion, and passion is life. By taking Hikari's assault without dodging or fighting back, and by just enduring the beating over and over to get Hikari to listen to him, Yuji explains that he's a cog, and that cogs have roles. His role is to exercise curses, and if Hikari is needed to do that, he'll follow him until he gives Yuji a yes. Hikari is shocked and internally monologues that this guy, does the eye of a cog really burn with fever? Kirara, Hikari's boyfriend, then points out to Hikari that
I don't actually know if Kirara is... Kirara, I think, is non-binary. Did I comment on this? No, I didn't comment on this at all. I have no clue what Kirara is. I'm just going to assume they're non-binary, though. But I think it's stated that it's a guy in certain translations.
he's getting heated, to which Hikari internally responds that he can't lie to his fever, before agreeing to make a deal.
Yeah, I hadn't quite nailed the talking tone. That might be why people get off put by this video. It's very down and very dry. Like, it's... I think I'm probably speaking with more emotion now. But I mean, this was I think my second or third, voiced video where I edited it and everything. But yeah, 99. Oh, 2 question marks.
Kirara smiles and monologues to himself that dear Hikari only ever got this passionate when helping others in high school. The second...
Again, I really don't know if that's a guy or a girl or non-binary or trans. I know that Urame is weird, but Urame is more complicated. Urame was originally a guy, but the body he reincarnated into is a woman. But he looks similar in both bodies, which is what makes it so weird.
The second instance is Sukuna, the king of curses who finds himself trying to not only kill Yuji, but crush his ideals during the recent chapters of the manga. Sukuna has found himself in numerous clashes of strength, but never fully fought most people on their worldviews or dreams. Instead, reasoning his own strength creates and serves an insatiable bloodlust and hunger that he truly does what he wants and wants whatever he feels like, and that by virtue of continuing to survive and crush all before him, he is then proven correct. After Higuruma's death, Sukuna finds himself thinking that he was disappointed, and reassures himself that other people merely exist for Sukuna to pass time until his death. He realizes if there's now disappointment in his opponents, despite all those opponents never changing over the past 1,000 years, that he is the one who changed. He blames Yuji for this, saying that he possesses an indomitable ideal. The idea that a weakling far, far below Sukuna can rival him with nothing but strength of will and maintained ideals, that is something deeply unpleasant to him. He says that just this once, he'll take Yuji's ideals and mince them to bits. While this is heavily reliant on prediction, I want to briefly mention Yuta's recent development in Chapter 261. We found out that Yuta took over Gojo's body using Kenjaku's curse technique, to which even Sukuna was shocked to see. While discussing the plan with the group, everyone but Gojo and Shoko seem to object to some degree, going as far as Kusakabe saying it's inhumane. Yuta snaps and responds, "What about Gojo? Is he not important? We've always pushed the burden of being a monster onto him alone. If no one else wants to step up, then I will." With the chapter ending with a domain clash between him and Sukuna. While not over yet, I heavily think Yuta will lose to emphasize that the idea of being a monster and giving in to being a monster is not the way to beat Sukuna. Hikari doubting that a cog could have the fever Yuji does, Sukuna saying that Yuji's ideals changed him, and Yuta choosing to become a monster and losing due to embracing a pre-established role. I think these are the reasons Yuji's...
Bad editing. You can still see the clip moving on the left, but not the right.
Individuality and kind heart will shine in the final battle against Sukuna, and break this self-deprecating title of a cog. To summarize, Yuji's current mentality stems from a response to the world that exists around him, instead of a desire to fundamentally reshape the world that created his response. And if Yuta loses by embracing his role as a monster, Yuji will win by refusing to give in to the world and its expectations.
It's kind of spitting. And yeah, he basically does. He says that he used to think that it was about how people died, and he talks about how even if there weren't... He literally says at one point that even if there were no roles, right? Even if there wasn't the role of being a cog or of being with family or anything like that, that it was all just bullshit, that people's lives would still have meaning. And he literally says it's not about how people die, it's about how people live immediately after. So, WUG was a good conclusion of this.
Unlike Yuji, Maki was more fundamentally cynical and ended up caring about those around her more due to those very people's influence than from an inherent desire to save and care for them that Yuji has. The first season of the anime revealed that Maki and Mai were abused and humiliated for being born twins and as failures. While we don't know why they each ended up different like this, despite enduring the same treatment.
Actually, since then I've learned... I might have just read or skipped a chapter, or maybe I just didn't understand it when I read it. There's apparently something that implies that Naoya raped Mai, which is probably why they're so different. Why Mai is like more defeatist, whereas Maki is more like rebellious. That's probably why, if that's true. But I don't think in this video I did, and I definitely don't look down on Mai for her stance compared to Maki. But I do ultimately still think what Maki did was for the best.
Maki's heavenly restriction is likely the cause, as it gives her the potential for growth, unlike Mai's limited curse technique. In Jujutsu Kaisen 0, we learn Maki tells Yuta her goal. We don't learn more until the perfect preparation arc, where Maki and Mai are almost murdered by their father and left for dead, when Mai sacrifices herself to allow Maki to reach her full potential. Her father tells them that children must not hold back their parents before calling them a stain on his life and leaving them to die. Inside of Maki's half-unconscious delirious state, Mai tells her that by creating a sword for her she will die, and asks Maki to destroy everything, showing that even if Mai would have assimilated into the clan's ways, even as a failure, she would have viewed it from the perspective of having assimilated. Or, to simplify a bit, she only would have chosen to give up her dignity and humanity to become a part of the clan, knowing those were a trade-off for assimilating.
Yeah, it's not like Mai was brainwashed into her perception or her decision. It's more that she recognized the reality of the world and thought that even with that treatment that it was still better than the alternatives. I love that panel of Destroy Everything.
When Maki awakens, she kills her father, all of the clan's warriors, and the new clan head Naoya, truly destroying everything the clan was and stood for. Continuing to live on and help her friends to fight in the Culling Games, and even fighting Sukuna on multiple occasions, Maki serves to illustrate a blatant rejection to assimilate, but just like Yuji, doesn't really do much to reshape the world that created her situation. Instead, simply killing the cancer that had formed in its body in the shape of the Zenin clan. While she and Yuji have been busy with Kenjaku and Sukuna, this is why they can only illustrate a part of Jujutsu Kaisen's theme of assimilation.
This video is good. I like this video.
Geto swings more in the direction of Maki than Yuji, having been born blessed with cursed spirit manipulation and the aptitude to use it, allowing for him to be called the strongest alongside Satoru Gojo.
Well, did I say Yuji or Maki?
Geto swings more in the direction of Maki than Yuji, having been born blessed with cursed spirit manipulation and the aptitude to use it.
They're both blessed. I don't really know if I would say that one is particularly more blessed than the other. Yuji does more explicit I don't know. Maki, I don't actually know who trains more. Probably Maki, right? So I guess Yuji would probably be the more blessed of the two.
Allowing for him to be called the strongest alongside Satoru Gojo, when Gojo's mere birth shifted the power of cursed spirits and the balance of Jujutsu society. However, Geto is aware of his strength in comparison to others, and a detail people overlook when discussing Geto's shift is that when he describes protecting non-sorcerers, he distinctly labels them the weak, and talks about them in the lesser sense, which shows that even if he was doing the right thing initially in protecting normal humans, it came entirely from an egotistical viewpoint of superiority, very similar to modern-day Gojo.
呪霊の発生を抑制するのは何より人々の心の平穏だ。それだけじゃない。わかったわかった。弱いやつらに気をつかま疲れるよ。ほんと。弱きを助け、強きをくじく。それ正論？俺、正論嫌いなんだよね。力に理由とか責任を乗っけるのはさ、それこそ弱者がやる。
Through his experiences with Rika and the revelation that he and Gojo were willing to disregard orders to protect her, we learn more to support that Geto's ideas of right and wrong come less from social standards, in this case Jujutsu society, and more so his own ideas of right and wrong. The detail that Geto kills his parents is viewed by some to be an extreme reaction, but when talking to Kuroi, he hears the care and love for Rika she has and makes the following statement. それじゃあ、あなたが家族だ。This shows that his view of family is very far removed from black and white ideas of family that the Zenin or Death Wind paintings have, and leans more to the idea of family that is chosen rather than assigned. When Rika is killed, the significance to Geto is much less the failure of his or Jujutsu Hai's mission, but in the revelation her murderer and the people who hired him are all non-sorcerer humans. We then see Gojo leave Geto behind in strength, with Geto's unhealthy appearance noted by Gojo. We see through his daily life that he's traumatized from hidden inventory and see him slipping when Yuki appears, and they talk about eliminating curses. The impression left behind with the encounter of Yuki is that Geto can, after all, decide right and wrong, his own feelings for himself, and he only has until Haibara is killed to think on it. Seeing the death of his friends, or maybe, based on the interaction with Kuroi, his family, dying to protect the normal humans, he cracks. After this, he's sent out to investigate a village and sees the exact same thing again. Two innocent girls who are scared and hurt being held prisoner by villagers who are scared of their supernatural power. And after he finally decides for himself what the right thing to do is, he murders everyone in the village, rescuing the two girls and even goes on to kill his parents. After this, Gojo confronts Geto, where the two argue over it. The question being asked is more directly, does your strength dictate what you do in life, or do you dictate what you live for with your strength? Geto, like I mentioned earlier, was Geto because with Gojo he was the strongest, an answer that left him empty after the events with Rika, and that also has left Gojo empty until he finally decided to kill the higher-ups. Geto now is Geto because he is Geto. He has chosen his path and will follow it because it's the right thing to do to him. When he tells Gojo killing him would have meaning, Gojo backs off because he is weak in resolve that Geto has now. Along with taking in Nanako and Mimiko and the rest of his family, he declares his disgust for normal humans.
猿は嫌い。私に従え。それが私の選んだ本音。猿ども。
While I do believe Geto made the wrong...
I really want to emphasize genocide and racism are both bad. JJK goes out of its way to have Geto become the Saturday morning cartoon villain, and JJK Zero to make fun of his racist beliefs. The joke is that he's wrong. Yeah. So, people get it twisted. Recognizing Geto's arc and like a larger context and what it means is very different from actually endorsing his actions from this point onward. They're two radically different things.
Choice. The suffering he endures and the conviction gained make it hard not to feel a little proud of him for gaining direction and resolve in attempting to reject the world as it is and for trying to change it. But if Geto made the wrong call, did anyone make the right one? While I do personally loathe Gojo because he gets on my nerves on every single level, he too changed with hidden inventory, shifting from the mindset that Geto now has to the one he had before, of using his preordained strength to protect the weak, even if Gojo is still wrong in viewing normal humans as lesser. After the events of Hidden Inventory, a detail that is very good is that Gojo's infinity is now permanent, meaning no one can truly get close to him, even if it's his own fault. This could be a metaphor for the gap that now exists between him and Geto, and the fact that the way he was able to befriend Geto is now impossible again, reinforced by the way he talks about his students, starting by recruiting Megami, then Yuta, and now Yuji, like he said in chapter 236. You can admire a blooming flower, but you can't force it to understand you. While Gojo is very unlikable to me because he arbitrarily dictates the gap between him and the people that could be his family, if he were willing, he chose the correct option that Geto couldn't, raising and teaching the next generation so they could reject the ways the world is and change it. So what does Jujutsu Kaisen say about assimilation? Not surprisingly, it seems to hate it very heavily.
So I didn't actually put this in the video because I don't think that... At the time, I didn't think that it was that poignant for this point. But the entire thing with Tengen and the assimilation of Riko is that it's literal, right? Because she's going to be the vessel for Tengen. But literally, that's a death. And she kind of understands that as she's on her way there. That she was literally living the last days of her life before she would effectively die. If she were to assimilate, which is also something I think that does strengthen this video a little bit, but I didn't put it in. In hindsight, I think I would put that in around Geto's part.
Yuji dismissing his individuality after suffering due to the way things are, to Maki's abuse and humiliation for not having talent due to the way things are, and Geto and Gojo trying to change the interaction between sorcerers and non-sorcerers because things are the way things are, it very heavily resents assimilation. The way things are, to paraphrase Sukuna, is how losers think. Assimilating exists in lots of ways, from devaluing your life based on the money it costs to pay for needs like food, water, and shelter, to choosing to become attractive so others don't physically cringe when they see you, and even extreme cases like taking the objectification and dehumanization of passing that was forced on you and forcing it on other trans people. Whether or not we assimilate to those things that are the way they are is everyone's choice to make, and viewing the faults and problems of the world as unmovable variables is ultimately the foundation for such evil to build on. It's said in Jujutsu Kaisen that curses are born as a result of humans harboring negative emotions, and the true curses of the world are built on fear. Fear that things will remain as they are.
Alright, I'm gonna cut it off so I don't get copyright strike for this. God damn, I cooked. This video is great. I haven't watched it in a bit. I'm glad it did. This is the one that I always push because it's like the only video essay type thing I've ever made that I'm like really proud of. This thing is goated. Honestly, some like audio tweaking and I think I'd probably be fine with it. I don't even know if I'd put in that assimilation tidbit, because I think people would misconstrue it too much and it would cause arguments about it being literal with Tengen. But yeah. This is actually something I've thought about lately, because I've been thinking about it and I can't really... I think everyone, everyone's first reaction to that choice is to try and assimilate. Whether that's for the best or not. And I found I can't really do it. I've been trying to think about it, because the answer here, obviously, is that you've got to influence other people, and the best way to do that is to influence the next generation. But I'm really bad with kids. I hate children. It makes me wonder how I could influence the world if I don't like kids. I still haven't really found a good answer. But yeah, I wanted to watch this and see if any of my thoughts on like the narrative of things have changed. Yuji's arc ends basically how I said. He realizes he's not a cog, and that it's more about living. So I like these videos. This was a good stream. I might come back for some Pokemon. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna end it here.